Covering the islands of the Bahamas, ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight.
The following portion of the news is brought to you by McDonald's. McDonald's, I'm loving it.
Following the death of an elder statesman. Good evening, I'm Opal Roach, and this is The Bahamas Tonight. One of the framers of the country's constitution has passed. The Honorable Paul Adderley died this morning following an illness. The legal scholar, politician, and trailblazer served for many years under the administration of the father of the nation, the late Sir Lyndon Pindling. He was remembered today by his colleagues and those he mentored. Andrew Knowles takes a look at the life and legacy of one of the nation's greats.
The Honorable Paul Adderley has been called a nation builder and Bahamian patriot, a man who gave of his talent, acumen, and intelligence to usher in the modern Bahamas. But after falling gravely ill late last week, he died at the Princess Margaret Hospital on Wednesday morning. He was 84. The late politician was an original member of the Progressive Liberal Party. While he was described as one of the country's brightest legal minds, he decided to devote most of his life to the service of his country in the political arena. His political career is extensive. From 1972 to 1992, he served as cabinet minister in several ministries. But his childhood friend, Governor General Sir Arthur Folkes, says perhaps his most significant contribution has been in developing the Constitution.
He was devoted to the law, and he was devoted to politics. And he used to like to use this phrase talking about others of like mind. He's a political animal. And he said that with great, as a great compliment, because Paul understood that political service was essential for the progress of a democratic country.
A mentor to many young political greats, such as current Foreign Affairs and Immigration Minister Fred Mitchell, Mr. Adderley's influence was far-reaching.
Yet again, we see one of the founding fathers of the country passing away. And it is an especially sad occasion for me because I had such a close personal relationship with him.
Besides his great sense of humor and sharp wit, Mr. Mitchell says one of the things that stood out the most about Mr. Adderley was that he was a true Bahamian patriot.
He fiercely believed in this country. He would not accept a knighthood, for example, would not accept the QC because he believed all of those were colonial honors, and that the things he wanted was an honor from the Bahamas, which he got as a result of having served in the cabinet for 10 years. He was named honorable for life by Prime Minister Pindling.
No doubt among many, Mr. Adderley is considered to be amongst the best of the nation builders. And while it is not certain how he will be memorialized yet, Sir Arthur believes the most fitting form of tribute is to educate the next generation of Bahamians on the contributions of these nation builders.
It's okay to do to name schools and roads and to erect monuments. Those things are very important. But those things are only reminders, and they should cause us to inquire. You remember the Bible saying about what mean these stones? And that is the purpose memorial should serve.
Now a state funeral will be held for Mr. Adderley. We expect those details will be announced in short order by the Cabinet Office. And while the contributions of this great Bahamian patriot will be remembered over the weeks, even in the months and years to come, his legacy will certainly live on. Andrew Knowles, ZNS News Network.
While the country's leader was among those paying tribute to the late Paul Adderley, Betty Thompson-Moss has more.
Referring to the late Paul Adderley as a dear friend, confidant, and political colleague, Prime Minister Christie describes his passing as a grave loss for the country. Mr. Christie says Mr. Adderley was a man of extraordinary intellectual brilliance, and his accomplishments were legion. During his more than 40 years in public service, Mr. Adderley served as a cabinet minister in foreign affairs, national security, education, finance, and as the longest-serving Attorney General of the 20th century. According to Mr. Christie, Mr. Adderley engineered the transition of our colonial legal system into a new era of constitutional sovereignty, while overseeing the modernization of our laws, expanded the judiciary, and deepened the rule of law as the bedrock of our civilization. Mr. Christie says in foreign affairs, Mr. Adderley was the primary architect of the nation's foreign policy in the founding years of nationhood. Mr. Adderley, he noted, was determined that the Bahamas, though small, should preserve its integrity as an independent nation. In national security, Mr. Christie referred to the late cabinet minister as a warrior against drug trafficking and was chiefly responsible for a wide range of anti-drug trafficking measures and for bringing about changes to better equip the police and defense force. In education, he applauded Mr. Adderley for introducing a raft of initiatives to improve academic standards in the public schools, restricting social promotion exercises, and for introducing the BGC-SE examination system. Further, Mr. Christie said in finance, Mr. Adderley steered the country through extremely difficult recessionary years in the early 1990s, carrying out these roles despite battling both cancer and heart disease. As a parliamentarian, Mr. Adderley was described as a fiery and prepared debater. The Prime Minister points out that he was absolutely incorruptible as a public servant of the highest order. Despite his service, Mr. Christie said Mr. Adderley shunned all honors and refused taking a knighthood, and simply wanted to serve the Bahamian people, which he did with distinction. Betty Thompson-Moss, ZNS News.
Well, former Prime Minister Hubert Ingram also sending condolences. He said Mr. Adderley was of that generation of political leaders who gave his considerable talents to the struggle for majority rule and independence. Mr. Ingram called him a great lover of things Bahamian, saying he developed a reputation as an avid photographer and a sports enthusiast. Mr. Ingram says he's grateful for Adderley's service, calling him a true patriot and a fine son of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Well, the Progressive Liberal Party officially launching its campaign for the North Abaco by-election. The country's leader was on that island today supporting the candidate. Keishla Adderley tells us that the PLP is hoping to secure that F&M stronghold.
The campaign is on in North Abaco. Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Perry Christie, touched down on the island today along with 3 of his cabinet ministers as they continue to court voters here, hoping to pull off an election victory when the by-election is held in North Abaco on October 15th. Of course, the hope is that the party's candidate Bernardo Curry, who contested the elections on May 7th, will pull off a victory here. Mr. Christie, speaking to reporters today, said it's a new day, speaking to his hope that the North Abaco constituents go with Mr. Curry and choose the Progressive Liberal Party to represent them. Of course, the Free National Movement also has set up shop here. It also spoke with the leader of the party, Dr. Hubert Minnis, who is optimistic that the party will continue its legacy of representation. Of course, Mr. Ingram has represented North Abaco since 1977. That's 30-plus years, 20-plus years as a Free National Movement Member of Parliament. And we spoke to a few residents here looking forward to the elections, registered for the elections as they would have been since May 7th. But some of the issues here, well, Mr. Christie spoke to the fact that there are some infrastructural improvements that he'd like to make, and as opposed to a 5-year plan, he has a 20 to 30-year plan for the future of Abaco. Mr. Hubert Minnis, the F&M leader, also speaking with us this afternoon, spoke to the fact that he was dealing with a recession when the general elections were held, and now the hope is to continue to improve conditions, attain jobs for the people of Abaco. So those are some of the issues that we can expect to hear as the campaign heats up here in North Abaco. Of course, nomination day taking place on next Wednesday, September 26th. In the meantime, both parties are expected to camp out here. Mr. Christie, for his part, says he'll hold at least one cabinet meeting here. That'll be somewhat historic. It'll be the first time that a cabinet meeting has been held outside of New Providence. That is the latest from North Abaco. Keisha Adderley, ZNS News.
Thanks, Keisha. Well, there are only 25 days left before the North Abaco by-election, and officials at the Parliamentary Registration Department are preparing for that poll. Now, just in case you're not sure if you qualify to vote in that area, Janaea Noel Ferguson has the answer in this report.
Operations at the Parliamentary Registration Department have intensified as the North Abaco constituency prepares for a by-election to fill the seat left vacant by former Prime Minister Hubert Ingram. Deputy Permanent Secretary in the department, Mr. Sherlin Hall, who is filling in for Parliamentary Commissioner Errol Bethel, explains who is eligible to vote.
All Bahamians who voted in the May 7th election will be entitled, in the North Abaco constituency, will be entitled to vote in this by-election. In addition to new voters who would have registered since May 7th, 2007. So those persons who turned 18 since May, and they came in to register with the relevant documents, their passport, their birth certificate, their name would appear on the register. The register closed one day before, which is the 17th. So anybody who registered before the 17th of September will be entitled to vote. If you registered yesterday, you cannot vote because the writ was issued on the same date as when you register. So only persons who registered before the 17th or before the 18th will be entitled to vote.
With about 4,500 persons on the register, Hall says 62 were added since the May 7th general elections. The constituency will still have 12 polling stations. However, voter turnout at by-elections are never as high.
The facts remain that the by-elections will never give you the exact 90% voter turnout as we had in a general election.
History has also shown that the governing party is not always successful in a by-election.
Perception is that the incumbent government always has the advantage, but that is not for us to say. But for instance, the Elizabeth by-election, as you know, that was an opposition seat, and the incumbent government, of course, did not win that seat per se. It might have went to court, and you know the results. And my mind goes back to I think, the Marco City seat as well. That was an opposition seat, and of course the incumbent government at that time did not win that seat either. There's no hard and fast rule about these things. Just depends on the wishes and desire of the people.
And as for overseas voting, Mr. Hall says they're still checking with the Attorney General's office to see how many persons actually voted from the North Abaco constituency in the last election and whether or not those persons will be included in the by-election. Janaea Noel Ferguson, ZNS News Network.
And why are these people heading to court? Find out coming up.